Hey, Tracie.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our Friday edition of Narrative Live. I am Tracie McElroy, and my friend and colleague Zev Shalev is with us live from Toronto.
It's good to be with you all the way from Canada. Nice night up here, although it's still quite chilly in the Great North.
Yeah, Maryland, we can't decide if it's going to snow or be 60 degrees. You know, every day it's up in the air.
You kind of suit your weather then.
Ah. So I know that we normally do a fun Friday episode where we kind of make light of the week and kick back and let off some steam and laugh. But this has been a really crazy news week with some very serious issues that came up today. And, you know, I took Mini-Me to the dentist and I was offline for a bit. And it was like all hell had broken loose in the news. My Twitter was insane when it got done at the dentist's office. Apparently, it's not a good week for sex offenders.
So let's take a look at the big stories that happened today. One of the biggest stories that broke today is, of course, the big scandal around the owner of the NFL's premier team. I don't know very little about football, but I do know the Patriots because everybody knows the Patriots, right? And for the owner of the Patriots, Robert Kraft, to be arrested is significant. To be arrested in the midst of what is turning out to be a pretty big story and a big crime bust is even more significant. And we're going to explore the significance of this and what we think might be going on, because it's not just he was arrested at a rub and tug, and arrested for a little bit of solicitation. It's much more than that, and we're going to go through that in the show today. Now, Andrew, I'm going to say his name incorrectly because it probably is. Tell me how you say it. Is it Laufer or Loafer?
Laufer.
You know, we know you so well because we've been talking to you on Twitter for so many months.
Yeah, you're just Andrew to me. How are you doing?
Doing good, guys. How are you?
We're really good tonight, and also stunned by some of the news because it's so serious and it seems to be so widespread. You're a lawyer by trade. I know this is not particularly your area of expertise per se, but as a lawyer, you must have a lot of interest in what is going on, and as an activist around Trump Russia. What are your thoughts broadly about what happened today and about the crackdown on some of these big names?
Well, you know, I think it's a long time coming. I think we've needed to, law enforcement, really needs to come down hard on human trafficking. It's a horrible, vicious crime. New York State, for example, just lifted the statute of limitations for prosecuting. It kind of dovetails into something different, but prosecuting molestation cases.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, Andrew, that has to do with the Catholic Church as well, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
But I think it's hand in hand with what we're talking about here in terms of exploiting, vulnerable people, exploiting minors, exploiting people that really have no means to really defend themselves. And that's kind of what we're dealing here with Kraft. And it sends a real loud message, I think.
It does indeed. He was arrested. He's 77. He was arrested twice, having gone into this particular rub and tug place, I guess is what they call them. They're massage places, but inside there were a lot of people sleeping there. This was their place where they spent all their time, and they were forced to basically do this kind of activity as they were doing for Mr. Kraft and others. Now, there's videotape showing him doing what he was doing. Of course, we haven't seen it, but the police have it. Yet he categorically denies that he was engaged in any illegal activity. And then his spokespeople say, because it's a judicial matter, we will not be commenting further. Now, there must be a lot of evidence around this, Andrew. So, is that the right way to approach this kind of thing right off the top, like just simply denying that there was any involvement in any illegal activity when it's so obvious that there was?
As a criminal defendant, you really don't want to give out too many statements. You want to deny everything. You want to keep quiet. The state has the burden of proof, and you want them to make that burden. You don't want to make it any easier for them by putting yourself on the stand, like we witnessed this past week with a real controversial figure, Mr. Stone. You kind of want to keep your clients tucked away and out of the earshot of any journalists.
Right, makes sense, especially when it's such a high-profile case. One of the things that struck me reading some of the research today and reading some of the articles was this article from the Boston Globe, and it's focused on a couple of things that the lead investigator of the case was said during the press conference. And I want to just read you some of this stuff because it's so interesting. The choice of words, are always so important. And the investigator Snyder described an investigation that was massive in scope. He said the criminals' ring's tentacles stretch to New York and to China. And then he said, even with the flood of arrest warrants, the search warrants, and other actions this week, this case was still only in its infancy. And,
That's crazy.
It began in July 2018, and already they've seized $3 million. But then he goes on to say, this is going to be a shockwave. This can carry on and go all the way through the United States. It's pervasive and real. Is that a sense that we're just beginning to see a much bigger operation, a much bigger takedown of organized criminality in general in the United States around human trafficking?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This is just one tentacle of it. We also have, the fentanyl issues and oxycodone, being brought over here from China. I think we're looking at a global takedown of a lot of these illegal enterprises. This being one of them, human trafficking. It's hard.
And it's a long time coming, isn't it? I mean, it's really good to finally see some steps being taken to get these criminals put away.
Without question, and it takes law enforcement time to build these cases. They have to get wiretaps, they have to get surveillance authorization, search warrants, things of that nature, and they have to build a case. And it's a very difficult and long endeavor, and it seems like it's starting to bear some fruit now. And if they're making comments like that, woe to the people that are actually committing these crimes.
Right. I mean, I've been a journalist for a long time. When cops say things like that and they say it repeatedly, you always take note because they, people ultimately say what they mean to say. I mean, Tracie, you were talking earlier that the definition of human trafficking is very different than what we all think of it as. It's a much broader. It includes a much broader group of people.
Yeah, human trafficking is actually defined as soliciting, recruiting, harboring, transporting, or otherwise obtaining another person to exploit him or her for labor, domestic servitude, or sexual exploitation.
So, Andrew, we're talking about underage teenagers basically as well. We're not just talking about people who are brought here illegally and smuggled into the country. That it could include people domestically who are living here that are being trafficked.
Sure, absolutely.
I don't know if people really realize that. I think people think of it as, these are probably foreigners being brought in or immigrants being brought in under different circumstances, but not that it's such a domestic issue. How big a problem is it?
I think it's everywhere. I've spoken to people in law enforcement. This stuff is just everywhere. When you're dealing with minors, you're opening up a whole new area of prosecution there. Another level of exploitation. Minors can't consent.
Right.
Even if we were to say, we have an 18 or plus year old person that wants to engage in something with someone else, you've got some defenses there. Well, look, it was consensual. We agreed to do this, and there's no money changing hands. When you're talking about a minor, it's strict liability. You're not getting away with anything. Minor can't consent. Minor can't, enter into a contract, so to speak. So none of that stuff's going to fly.
And it's so pervasive. There's probably people watching us now, probably people reading a lot of the coverage happening that might be stuck in a situation that might be very difficult for them to get out of, or might be experiencing some sort of exploitation. And later on in the show, we'll certainly give away, share some information about how people can handle that. And we've got to be really cognizant of the fact that this is still so widespread.
Right.
I spent some time. So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's very scary for these victims to come forward. They're physically intimidated.
Right.
They're beaten. It's really a horror show, and the more education we get out there, and the more investigations law enforcement do, the better.
I want to run you through a few slides because I think these are kind of interesting, related to this particular investigation. So inside the indictment, I think it's an indictment. That is the booking form, I guess, from the police investigators.
Right,
There
that's
are
what it
clues.
looks like.
There are clues as how they got to this case, and also how widespread it is, because they talk about the site called Rub Maps, which I went and spent a little bit of time on today. It's really a very shocking thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's basically a online database where anyone can go and find, rub and tug places in your neighborhood. There's thousands of women listed on there, thousands of places listed on there in every community in North America. It says at the very beginning here that, there's zero tolerance for underage prostitution or type of sexual acts between unconsenting individuals. But, please, if there's any suspicious behavior, please report it. But the reality when you get inside the site is absolutely horrifying. I mean, firstly, the map itself, which you can see there on the left, there's a detailed guide. You can drop a pin and find out in your neighborhood, in your area, where this kind of activity is taking place. And this is not just prostitution. This is prostitution related to human trafficking, people who have not got the normal rights and not got the ability to live there, to live freely within this country, and might be scared to report some of this stuff. Right. And then you get a database list on the other side there of all these places. And then, here's the one that Kraft went to in Jupiter. Again, you got a listing. I've blocked out their faces, but you got a listing of all the women who were there, who are available. And it's not just, come in and get a quick massage. When you look at the detailed search, I'm not going to read what the services are on some of these things, but in the detailed search here, there is a very clear listing of what you might get involved in if you were involved with these women. It's quite shocking to me that this kind of thing exists in an online available venue like this, and that this is happening in every neighborhood in North America, probably.
Well, profit pushes it. That's why they're making tons and tons of money off of it.
Right. And so we're talking about huge organized crime, presumably. I mean, this is not just a little mom and pop shop kind of thing. This is a very serious.
Right. This isn't an isolated arrest in Florida. This is going to open a can of worms, is what we're saying.
Right. Right. Think about the logistics that's involved here. You're smuggling, you're bringing women over from different countries, from China, Philippines, wherever. You're setting them up with room and board. You're feeding them, and then you're moving them around from place to place. So a lot of times, from what I understand, is they don't want people becoming friends with other people. They don't want people getting too close, because then they can kind of conspire to escape. Right. So they move them around a lot.
My question is, the men who are visiting these places, how can they not know what is going on behind the scenes?
I mean, I think it varies, like with anyone else. Some think that it's, a consensual thing, and they're doing it for their own reasons, and I guess others may just not care.
Right. I think that may be the case. It's really, really quite shocking, but not as shocking, really, in some ways, as some of the incredible stories we've heard about in the last few days and weeks about R. Kelly, which have now landed up in him being arrested, or at least charged. Tracie, you're going to pick up the story on this one.
Yeah, so you guys probably remember that video documentary series on Lifetime called Surviving R. Kelly. I think we have a little clip of that, don't we, Zev?
We do.
Can you describe the physical abuse? God, I can't take another day. I can't do this anymore. It shouldn't have happened. Why didn't anyone notice? We all noticed. No one cared because we were Black girls.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Surviving R. Kelly, a 3-night event.
Wow.
Like many other people, I watched that documentary, and as a mom of a preteen, it was deeply disturbing to me. And I walked away thinking, how in the hell for 20 years has this man gotten away with abuse of minor girls? I mean, crazy. But that may end today, Zev and Andrew. R. Kelly believed that he could fly, but he found out today that he had been indicted on 10 counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse, a Class 2 felony involving 4 alleged victims. And this was announced by the Cook County State's Attorney, Kim Fox, today. Day. He's scheduled to appear in court Saturday for a bail hearing. His arraignment is set for March 8th. A warrant has been issued for Kelly's arrest. This is what the Chicago police are telling us. The charges handed up in the indictment from the grand jury span from 1998 to 2010. If he is convicted, R. Kelly faces a maximum of 7 years in prison on each count. Reminder, there are 10 counts alleged.
That is an incredible amount. There's no limitation on charging him, presumably, over time when it comes to sexual crimes like this.
It depends on the sexual crime. I'm not really sure in terms of in Illinois, but it appears that they're going back to 1998. So I would say if there is a statute, it's a pretty long one.
Yeah, I have some information on there. There's 4 victims, you guys, that are mentioned in the indictment. The first victim goes by the initials HW, was involved in incidents between May 26, 98 to May 25, 99. The grand jury returned an indictment on 4 counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse based on the victim being under the age of 17, and R. Kelly was beyond more than 5 years older than her. So that's 98 to 99. Then we have the second victim, RL. Those incidents were between September 26, 98 to September 25th, 2001. That was an additional 2 counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse. The third victim goes by LC. That was an incident February 18th, 2003. Now, this one is a little bit more detailed, and I'm sorry to be graphic, but the grand jury returned an indictment of 1 count of aggravated criminal sexual abuse based on the transmission of semen by Kelly upon any part of the body of the victim for the purposes of sexual gratification during the course of an underlying felony of attempted criminal sexual assault. And the fourth victim, JP, those incidents were from May 1st, 2009, all the way through to January 31st, 2010. And those are 3 counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse based on the victim, again, being under the age 17 and Kelly being more than 5 years older than the victim. Crazy. The time frame, it's 98 to 2010. I mean, it's just crazy.
Are they the same victims that were in the documentary series, or are these different people that have come
I
forward since?
don't know, and I don't know that they have confirmed any of that information because they were minors, Zev. So,
right. And the age difference thing is so interesting, Andrew. Is that a typical thing that if it's more than a certain amount of a difference in age, then it changes the legality of what you're engaging in?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it could raise the penalty.
Right. Okay.
If you have someone who's 16 and 18,
right,
engaging in some sort of, teenage thing, it's a little bit different than having someone who's 35 and 16.
Right.
So,
right.
yeah.
And let's keep in mind that he's not a young guy. He was born January 8th, 1967 in Chicago. So, and that's why this has been going on, since he was in his 20s.
Is there a sense, you've watched the documentary series, I haven't, Tracie, but is there a sense that some of these women were sort of enamored by,
that's how he drew them in. Yeah, certainly that's how he drew them in. And many times they wanted to be singers. And so he would, say, come to my studio, I want to hear you sing, that sort of thing. And then he would put on the charm and the moves, and that it would go from there.
Did any of them want to stay in that setting, or were they all in the documentary series saying they were trying to get away, or did they try to get away?
Most of them, if I recall, over time realized that they were being manipulated and played. But keep in mind, these are the minds of 14, 15, 16-year-old girls. They're not adults who can make the same kinds of decisions.
Absolutely. No, I'm not suggesting otherwise, of course not.
And Andrew, I want to ask you about this. They're saying it's a no bail arrest warrant, which doesn't necessarily mean that he won't be offered bail once he appears in court. What is that? Do you know?
That might be something specific to Illinois or Chicago. Generally, when you have no bail, he's getting remanded to city or state custody. So, he'll be there pre-trial until, times for him to be in court come about. I mean, the judge may, set bail at some point. It all depends. It comes down to a number of different things, like, whether or not he's a flight risk,
Right.
things of that nature. I mean, he's looking at some heavy time potentially. So, I don't think it would be ill-advised to necessarily remand him to prison, pre-trial, pending, either a plea or a jury verdict.
Will he likely turn himself in your opinion, or do you think he's going to, is going to be an actual like an arrest process, or do you think he's likely just to hand himself over?
Well, the right move would be for him to surrender, through his attorney, present himself to authorities. It's less, the court will take that into consideration, that he's willing and maybe more inclined to grant bail in a situation like that.
Oh, I see.
There's a number of different factors that really kind of go into it, but that's one.
The victims themselves are going to find this an incredibly difficult period of time, as we've seen before. Often the victims are the ones that land up having to pay a huge price in terms of public exposure and ridicule and whatever.
I'm really hoping, since they were all minors when these crimes occurred, they're adults now, but I'm hoping that they'll be very careful about keeping their identity hidden.
Well, that's what I'm asking, Andrew. Is there a way to actually protect victims in this kind of high profile case?
Of course. I mean, the state's going to, certainly do what they can, restraining orders. Also they may have civil lawsuits against him. I mean, you when you're a minor, the statute of limitations to sue is stayed until you become age majority, which is usually, at least for civil lawsuits, 18. And once that, at least in New York State here, I shouldn't keep it to New York State, but that's in most states. And then once that occurs, the statute starts running, and at that point they can sue. So depending on how old these girls are, they may have a cause of action. Well, they certainly would have a cause of action against R. Kelly.
Interesting. Tracie, you've been talking about the Space Jam and the impact
it's
had on a lot of
since the 1990s, Kelly has been the subject of numerous allegations of sexual abuse and misconduct with underage girls, and he has always categorically denied it. In fact, in 2002, he was indicted on 13 counts of child pornography, but was acquitted of all charges in 2008. And I think what is most unsettling to me, guys, is during that same time period, he had one of his biggest hits for a movie that children just loved, Space Jam. And, kids looked at R. Kelly as some kind of hero for this song, I Believe I Can Fly, when in fact, he was not a hero at all.
Not at all. And, it's when you think about the impact that this guy had on so many young kids. And until recently, we all knew this about R. Kelly, though nothing was done about it. It was sort of like an accepted secret.
Being acquitted in 2008 was intimidating for a lot of these victims.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Exactly. Why would they want to come forward now when they saw what happened? Exactly right.
Right. I mean, this is a little bit more of a, different in the sense that they're going to have live testimony as opposed to captured, computer, hard drives and things of that nature, or prints or whatever the heck he had. It's very compelling to a jury when you have a victim of something like this get up on the stand and tell their story.
Yeah.
Right. Defense attorneys don't want that. Defense attorneys will be encouraging, depending on the situation, to think about having their, suggesting to their client that they should maybe think about taking a plea or if they're being sued, obviously, civilly, they, to settle, jury,
I think R. Kelly has done a lot of settling over the years. He's paid off a lot of families and young girls.
Right.
The obvious parallel. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. Like what you brought up before, Tracie, in terms of Space Jam, a lot of these predators, if you want to refer to R. Kelly in that matter, do things to entice kids to come their way. That could almost look like something, along those lines, to draw them, in. so they can they can exploit them.
Wow.
So,
I hadn't thought about it that way. I had not thought about it that way.
And the obvious parallel there is obviously Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson,
the experiences he had in Wonderland and all that. It was just such a alluring environment for young kids to find themselves in.
Yeah, no, it's pervasive, and the thing that's also very intimidating is how famous these people are and how financially, how powerful they are financially and otherwise. You look at Harvey Weinstein, you look at Woody Allen. There were a number of allegations supposedly. There's a number, people get intimidated by that. People, I've gone head to head with some defendants that can be very intimidating in terms of their power, in terms of their wealth, in terms of their contacts, and it's a very difficult thing for clients to kind of go through. It takes a lot. It's not just what you see on TV. Oh, well, this guy's rich, he'll just give you tons of money. It's not like that.
There's a bit of a thread today, with Bob Kraft, and and even the stuff that's happening with Epstein and the stuff with R. Kelly. There seems to be just two different classes of justice system in the United States. Where rich people can get away with stuff that poor people could not get away with, or that average person could not get away with. To a degree, again and over and over again.
To a degree, yeah, I agree with that. If you can afford to pay for a defense and not relying on legal aid, not that they're not good attorneys, they're just overwhelmed with the amount of people they need to help. On both the state and federal level, it's going to make it easier for you to beat a charge or to get a favorable plea. So yeah, there's certainly that. I think our justice system is great. I think it's got issues that need to be worked on, and this may be one of them. We need to even the playing field here, but depending on where you are, given the massive amount of people that are charged every day with crimes of all types, it's difficult to do that.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of I don't want to move off R. Kelly completely, but just the Epstein situation obviously has huge ramifications for him and for Acosta, but also for potentially the president and others. What do you think is going to play out there? Because it's certainly a huge area of interest for everybody right now.
It's from what I've read, it really is uncharted territory. You literally have the Secretary of Labor, Secretary Acosta, found to have broken the law according to a judge. In this plea negotiation. I've never seen something like that before.
Why hasn't he resigned? Why didn't he resign immediately?
The same reason why many of these secretary picks or people in Trump's cabinet don't resign. They feel they're kind of untouchable, but you got to really raise the heat up. And I think politically that's going to start happening now. This is ramping up. And I think the Epstein matter is really going to capture, so to speak, a lot of these high-powered individuals who have been involved in these types of things. It seems like,
and have always believed that they were above the law.
Right, exactly. And and also there's certainly that, but there's also compromise on these people. I'm sure there were videos and things of that nature. Not that we should feel overly sympathetic to them,
right?
But there are other reasons why these people do these things.
It's been stunning to watch the last few years, starting with Weinstein, but beyond that, just the Me Too movement has transformed the power structures in our world, and about time, but also what an incredible process for everyone to go through. And it's hard. It's hard for everybody to go through such a reckoning of the lack of judgment and lack of justice that we've had.
It is, and I really support the Me Too movement. I just want to emphasize one thing, that each of these situations need to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis.
Absolutely.
Because you have a situation like Al Franken, where he may have engaged in inappropriate behavior, but to the degree, not that some others, have engaged in that, allegations made against Epstein and Weinstein and everyone else. Even Trump. So really, we don't want to broad brush this whole thing. We kind of really want to look at each situation individually.
I think you're totally right there. And, there's also the right to have a due process. We want to at least guarantee that for every citizen,
Without
because
question.
and that goes to
Take
everyone we
shortcuts.
mentioned today. Tracie, you've got some
Yeah, I know
resources
this
for
has been
help
a
people.
really tough topic, and it's dealt with a lot of issues tonight that we do need to discuss. But I want to give everybody the information they need if they are being sexually assaulted, know a child that's being sexually assaulted. You can call and talk to someone anonymously at the National Child Abuse Hotline, and that's 1-800-4-A-CHILD. And to speak with someone who is trained to help, you can also call the National Sexual Assault Hotline at 1-800-656-HOPE.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Really appreciate you spending time with us. We kept you a little hostage past your
I know,
past your
Andrew,
dinner
it's a
hour.
Friday night. Thank you for giving us some
It's all
time.
right. No, my pleasure. These are important topics. We need to discuss them.
Yeah, and we're really happy to be able to share this product with everybody and our content with everybody. We'll always remind people that if they feel like it, they can donate or subscribe to our work by going to
Go to primosocial.com/NarrativeLive. Remember, guys, we can't keep doing our reporting and our shows without your support. Zev and I are doing all of this for free. So your $10 a month will really, really help a lot. Thank you again, Andrew. I hope everyone has a great weekend.
Thanks
You
so
too.
much.
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
Andrew. Cheers.
My
Have a
pleasure.
great weekend. Bye, Tracie.
You too.